He found her, tears streaming down her tiny face, nestled in a trash can. The shock hit him hard, like a punch to the gut. Years rolled on, life did its dance, and another twist awaited him, one he'd never have foreseen. The story begins on a quiet night in a cozy countryside town. Marcos, the devoted policeman, strolled on his patrol rounds. The town lay hushed, like it was under a sleepy spell, letting Marcos soak in the serenity. The lights of the town twinkled like stars descending from the sky. Houses stood there, each hiding countless stories within their walls. And at that moment, his thoughts wandered deeper. Marcos wondered about having a family, a clan to share his highs and lows, his joys and fears. His heart ached for a companion, someone to return to after a hard day. He was pushing 40, a police officer who'd woven solitude into his life. The risks he took daily had steered him away from marriage and fatherhood. His own dad, also an officer, had been taken away by a bullet, leaving behind wounds that never truly healed. That pain, his mom carried it till her last breath. So Marcos chose the path of a solitary guardian, shielding his heart from potential loss. But in doing so, he'd become a soul yearning for connection, for someone to share his stories and feelings. Marcos wasn't a fancy guy. He'd grown up humbly in the same town. His dad, a cop, and his mom, a seamstress, worked hard to keep things moving. Losing his dad when he was small fueled his drive to make a difference. The police badge became his dream, his tool to fight against the darkness that took his father. At 18, he joined the force, and that passion never dimmed. Unlike his peers, Marcos cared deeply for the folks he protected. He knew their stories, volunteered at shelters, and joined church events. His colleagues saw a warrior with guts, the guy who charged into danger with a smile. Once, faced by armed criminals, he didn't wait for backup, he confronted them head-on. His dad's spirit burned bright within him, and he stood tall, taking down those who threatened the peace. Off-duty, Marcos was just a regular guy, not a hero, he'd say, despite his accomplishments. He'd unwind with detective books and action movies, always with an eye for mysteries. Becoming a detective was his secret dream, and he prepared himself for it. Days blurred into nights, his commitment unshaken, never suspecting life was brewing a grand surprise. Then, that special night arrived. Marcos patrolled the city, totally unaware of how his life was going to be flipped upside down. Suddenly, an odd sound stirred the air, pushing Marcos to investigate. He followed the noise, his heart racing. There, near the garbage cans, a sound that seemed unreal, a baby's cries. No way, he thought, inching closer. And then, in the dim light, he saw her, a newborn, wrapped in an old cloth, crying out in the cold. The scene seized him, anger and sorrow swirling within. How could someone leave this fragile, innocent soul behind? Marcos cradled her, his heart heavy with a mixture of emotions. An ambulance raced in, but as he waited holding the baby, something changed. Looking into those tiny eyes, he felt a bond, a connection he hadn't seen coming. Tears welled in his eyes, an overwhelming affection for this child in his arms. He whispered soothing words, "You'll be okay, my little flower." A tornado of feelings consumed him, tenderness for the abandoned, anger toward the heartless. In that fleeting moment, as she slept in his arms, Marcos glimpsed a different life, a life where this fragile girl might have been his own daughter. He gently held the baby's head, tiny and dirt-streaked, yet beautifully innocent. Warm waves of tenderness washed over him. "So beautiful," he whispered, getting used to the feeling. She tugged at his heartstrings, this little one. But then a realization hit him hard. He didn't know what lay ahead for her, but he knew his purpose had shifted. He resolved to do whatever it took to help her, to shield her from the harsh world. The gratitude he felt for finding her, for being her hero, swelled within him. Saving her would give his life new meaning. Eventually, the ambulance took her away and he followed, watching over her as she received care every step of the way. In the hospital, his worry transformed into responsibility, even though they'd just met. As he sat there, he couldn't fathom how anyone could abandon such an angelic child. He'd read about crimes and mysteries, but now he was in the middle of a real-life enigma. The quest for justice swelled within him, even as fear whispered in the background. A nurse approached him, her eyes compassionate, and shared the baby's condition. She would be fine. Thank the heavens, thought Marcos. Yet the news that she'd be placed in a foster home, that she'd be given up for adoption, made him feel sad. He named her Flower, inspired by his words in the car when he first found her. Felt right, but bittersweet. Days rolled on and Marcos continued to be involved. He wasn't required to, but he couldn't stay away. The investigation intrigued him and drew him in. He ensured Flower received the care she deserved, visiting her in the maternity ward and bringing her gifts. A pink outfit with a fluffy cap warmed everyone's hearts, especially the policeman's, as he held her, feeling a newfound connection. With each visit, his bond with her deepened. Just gazing at her brought a soothing calm, a fatherly love. He started dreaming about her first steps, her laughter, and then an idea flickered. What if he adopted her? The thought warmed his heart, painting a future that felt just right. But his hopes of adopting her were dashed when another couple appeared, eager to give her a home. They seemed perfect, a young, attractive pair with the means to give her a good life. Hope and heartbreak tangled within him until the day finally came for Flower to leave the hospital with her new family. As he handed her over, his heart felt heavy. Surprisingly, they decided to keep her name, Flower. This unexpected gesture touched him deeply, flooding him with a mix of gratitude and bittersweet happiness. Tearfully, he bid her farewell, knowing she'd be safe and loved. He left the hospital, returning to his routine, but Flower's memory lingered like a constant presence. He was determined to bring justice to the beautiful little baby, to make things right. And so he carried on, a policeman with a mission, haunted and inspired by the fragile life he cradled in his arms, his little Flower. Over 2 decades passed, and now at 62, Marcos still stood alone, his life dedicated to peace and harmony. Despite the case being shut, life continued its march. Rising through the ranks, Marcos eventually became the head of investigations, a recognized figure in the world of solving crimes. Murders, thefts, trafficking, he confronted them all with ease. Yet, beneath the facade of courage, a persistent ache lingered. The memory of that abandoned baby who, for a fleeting moment, felt like his own. Officer Marcos fought on, with constant thoughts of Flower as she flourished in her adoptive home. He often thought about her happiness, her life's journey. Her image was a constant presence, an unanswered question etched into his heart. Then, a surprising twist. One day, a young woman with raven black hair entered his office, wearing a shy smile. "You're Officer Marcos, right?" she inquired. His heart leaped, his gaze fixated on her. As she shared her story, adoptive parents, gratitude, recognition hit him. "Flower, is that you?" he cried out, his voice shaking with emotion. Tears welled up in the old man's eyes. This was the most pleasant surprise he'd ever got. In her presence, Marcos found solace. She narrated her life and her parents' love until tragedy struck, leaving her an orphan. As they spoke, their connection deepened, an unspoken bond between them. Flower expressed her desire to repay him for his heroism, but Marcos, true to his character, declined, maintaining his composure. He'd acted out of duty, not for reward. She laughed, her eyes shimmered with understanding. Hours flowed by as they talked, memories shared, bridges built. Her life story became his quest, and Marcos committed to getting to the bottom of her origins. He delved deep, overcoming the years that had passed. Despite his countless career achievements, the image of the infant he once held never faded. After 2 months of relentless pursuit, breakthroughs emerged. Clues led to a kidnapped pregnant woman from years ago. A mix-up led to her abandonment near the park after giving birth in captivity. But thankfully, a kind woman has found her and had cared for her. Marco's team pieced together the puzzle, tracing Flower's biological mother. And finally, after all these decades, they found her. Their reunion was an emotional whirlwind, a connection built across time. Yet destiny had one more surprise in store. As Marcos dug further, he formed an unexpected bond with Ruth, Flower's mother, who was now 53. Love blossomed between them. Flower and Marcos shared a unique father and daughter relationship, but unexpectedly, Ruth and Marcos fell in love along the way. 2 years later, Marcos found himself with the family he'd always wished for. Ruth became his wife, and he embraced the role of a father to Flower. The man who'd spent a lifetime protecting others discovered a new purpose, being a father to his beloved Flower. Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment that shaped your life unexpectedly? Share your stories below. Before you sign off, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more inspiring videos. Until next time.